Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on 2021 Safety Tech Predictions with Cameron Stevens. My name's Jared and I'm from Myosh. Before I hand over to Cameron, I'll just run through a bit of housekeeping in case this is your first webinar with us. The session will be recorded. We'll be sending out a dedicated email on Monday with the full recording, as well as a link to the slides, contact information, etc. If you have a question for Cameron during the webinar, pop it into the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen, and we'll spend about 10-15 minutes at the end of the session running through them. So now just a bit of background on Cameron before I hand over to him. Cameron Stevens is a health and safety professional with a passion for step-changing health and safety performance with emerging technologies, and is considered Australia's leading safety technologist and safety futurist. He is the ANZ Solutions Engineer for wearable technology startup RealWear, Director of Safety Innovation Consultancy Pocketknife Group, and the founder of the Safety Innovation Academy. So I think that's probably enough from me. I'll hand it over to Cameron and he can take it away.
Thanks, Jared. Quick AV check. We're all clear?
All clear from my end.
Thanks, Jared. And if there are any concerns, hopefully people can pop that in the chat and let Jared know so he can let me know. The wonders of virtual presentation. So thanks very much for the opportunity to present on a topic extremely close to my heart. We'll jump straight into it. So my predictions for 2021 in relation to safety, innovation and safety technology. We'll kick off with what I don't think is going to happen this year. No particular order. So we won't be seeing a significant increase in driverless transport. So autonomous vehicles in the mining sector, absolutely. We're seeing driverless haul trucks extensively being used, and that will apply potentially, is already being applied to the autonomous drills. But in terms of, and we will see places like warehouses, fixed warehouses using potentially driverless and autonomous equipment, but we won't be seeing driverless vehicles out on the road and managing our supply chains this year. Human augmentation, predominantly exoskeletons. Again, I don't think the evidence base is strong enough, and the market and the form factor at the point that we're seeing scale there. VR, we're seeing interesting use cases, and we are seeing virtual reality being used for task-based health and safety training, and also remote collaboration use cases. However, we won't see wide-scaled adoption of virtual reality across all business, small to medium enterprise, for example. We will see patchy use cases being explored, and we'll continue to hopefully craft those use cases to tip that into scale over sort of 2022 into 2023 and beyond. The widespread use of robotics, as I've discussed before, we will see inspection style use cases come about. So confined space, robotics, we could potentially also put drones into that category. We have seen a relatively wide use of drones in the past 2 to 3 years. However, again, just the requirement for most of these inspection robots to be tethered with cables and equipment for relatively, we need a power source as well to power the robots. We just won't see this scale across 2021. Artificial intelligence is an interesting one around using computational models to analyze data and provide insights around health and safety information. And we are seeing a lot of application of the use of AI to analyze our data sets. But in terms of really well-trained AI models for predictive analytics, I don't see the ingredients for success there to be for 2021 to be the year where we're seeing that come into the mainstream. So what will we see in 2021? So these are my prediction is that 2021 is the year of connected work, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. We'll move from the work from home environment to the work from anywhere environment. So taking the ability to communicate and connect a worker, not just from their laptop or their mobile phone, but anywhere in the work environment, all throughout the supply chain. We will see a massive increase in the use of wearable computing, albeit I feel a little biased about that, and we'll talk about that in a second. Industrial sensors, they're cheap, they're easy to install, they provide excellent, easy information source for connected data. So we'll continue to see industrial sensors be applied all the way down to small to medium enterprise, just due to the availability, the easy integration and setup of these devices. So devices like the MOVIS sensors, really easy to set up, able to be used in intrinsically safe environments. We definitely will see industrial sensors scale this year. Wearable sensors we already have seen scale, but what we'll see scale this year, and by scale I mean widespread adoption, is we'll see people be more comfortable with the use of wearable sensors, and we will see health and safety teams be more structured around the use of wearable sensors. So biometric sensors, things like Fitbits, things like movement sensors, location sensors, gas detectors, portable gas detectors, environmental monitors, things that are worn on the body. We'll see that continue to grow this year. Most of that will be around the social acceptance of having a sensor carried around with you. I also believe this year will be the year of digital learning. Certainly we've seen online learning programs, over the last 10 years and longer. However, this year we'll start to see more wide, so multi-platform, multi-format, and preference-driven digital learning. So we saw in 2020 the educational institutions, universities dabble in having a go and pivoting their programs to be online. But what we'll see is health and safety education, in my view, will move to these on-demand hybrid platforms. And the classic example of that is the Safety Futures program that's coming out from David Proven and the Safety Futures and ForgeWorks team. That style of hybrid on-demand, up-to-date learning will be the preference for most safety professionals, in my view, to access their learning. And we'll see platforms either in virtual or augmented setups with wearable computing, or just with mobile phones and tablets being used to distribute learning content throughout the organization. And lastly, we will see some AR, so augmented reality, mostly will be handheld, so through a smartphone, and we'll see the transition to wearable computing, and then head-mounted AR displays probably scale in the next 2 to 3 years, not in 2021. So the year of connected work, and let's unpack that a little bit further. First of all, a word on forecasting. So I was a little reluctant to have a crack at giving a forecast this year, but I figured, given this is my area of passion, I needed to have a go. And given the pace of change and the fact that, even by the time this has been recorded by Jared and played back to you on Monday, things have probably already accelerated from where we are today. And a little disclaimer is that where have my predictions come from? Well, they've come from a few contextual experiences, most of which come from my experience working with RealWear. So RealWear is a wearable computing company, a wearable tablet. I think I've got one just here. So a head-mounted wearable computer. So I've been doing deployments with RealWear roughly 100 odd individual deployments over the last 12 months. And those deployments have given me access to IT teams, the key business decision makers in organizations that are responding to COVID-19 and the changing way that their workplaces are set up. So it's given me access to an understanding of what's going on, and I've been able to chat with health and safety teams in particular about what they're looking at and how they're choosing to respond to the changing nature of their workplace. I've also have some, I guess, affiliations to a certain extent. So I advise Risk Talk, who are a voice-based risk assessment application. So I advise them on their strategic direction and have been chatting with them about the insights that they are getting from their customers. I've been trying out the Preventure wearable sensors, so trying out the form, understanding how that technology works. So they're a wearable sensor company based out of Sydney. Facilitate, which are a virtual reality training platform based here in Perth. ThinkSafe, who are an EHS software provider based out of New Zealand. And so having access to that community of technology providers to understand what they're seeing and marrying that up with my own experience with RealWear is where those predictions have come from. And I consolidate those viewpoints into the Safety Innovation Academy, which is really a program to enable health and safety professionals to improve their digital literacy and develop digital safety strategy. And the Safety Concierge is basically mapping health and safety problems with technologies on the market. The Australian flag is probably the most important component here about prediction into 2021. Today marks 292 days where Perth, Western Australia, where I'm presenting from, has been COVID-free in relation to community transmission. So we've had no community transmission of COVID-19 in Perth for 292 days. So what that means is that right now I am physically interacting with workplaces to do technology deployments, and I'm getting an experience of what Europe, the US will be experiencing perhaps in a year's time or longer. So the West Australian island within an island enables me to conduct face-to-face interactions with COVID-19 restrictions in place, but I'm also doing deployments virtually with the rest of Australia. So I'm truly working in a hybrid model, and it's given me access and insight to what the world will probably look like in 12 months' time. So I am living the prediction. So that's the reason for why I have put those predictions in place and why I believe 2021 is the year of connected work. So let's have a look at hybrid work in a little more detail. So the working from anywhere movement is a combination of having remote work, so work conducted fully virtually, hybrid work, which is a combination of virtual and in person. And then all of this work is effectively requires some level of digital enablement. And we require things like, we first of all need an internet connection. We need to have a device that enables us to connect to other people. And over the last 12 months, our workforce has really become quite accustomed to this hybrid way of working and have become far more familiar with the use of digital tools. And that has been the benefit of COVID-19. So if you look at the ICT teams in 2021, so what does an ICT team have? So an information and communication technology team in a business, what are they thinking about in 2021? Well, right now they're thinking about how do we enable our people to access information wherever they are in the world, working from anywhere. They need a mobility platform to do that. They need mobile access to information from the broader business network. So that typically would require the information to be housed not on the premise on a server, so on-prem servers. It's typically going to be information able to be accessed via the cloud. And we're seeing ICT teams have a cloud strategy, mobile device strategy, which is typically bring your own device, because workers like their own preferences. Ideally, they like to choose whether they want a tablet, whether they want an Apple product, or they would prefer a Samsung product. There's preferences that come down to integration with their home setup. Do they use Google? Do they use Amazon? Do they use other products that they'd like to link in with? And then obviously, because things are being accessed all over, the cybersecurity posture over the last 12 months and moving into 2021 is king. And we'll see companies like Myosh and the other EHS software providers very much mirror this strategic direction. Cloud first, mobility enabled, and really cyber security conscious. What does safety look like at the moment? So digital workplace health and safety really is the cornerstone of that is entering data into an EHS software platform. So we've been doing that for many, many years, digitizing paper-based processes, and it's taken us so far. We will typically also interact with our enterprise resource planning tool, things like SAP, it might just be an Excel spreadsheet, the types of tools that the business is using for its enterprise planning and work execution. So we'll typically have an EHS or health safety data tool to capture the data. We'll have links to other systems, and then we might have a reporting tool where we enter the data in. And again, most people are using Excel to create spreadsheets and insights and graphs to amalgamate the data from those two top streams and then provide some kind of reporting about the insights that have come out of that data capture. And then lastly, what we're seeing, some of the more emerging and future-focused health and safety teams are also getting information from sensors and potentially from applications on mobile phones that are specifically capturing data. They often stand alone and not that well integrated, and that's basically the landscape of health and safety, digital health and safety right now. And COVID-19 basically was an accelerant to get us to that place. All of those systems were of some way along a journey of maturity over the last 5, possibly even 10 years. Certainly all of the organizations that I've worked in as a health and safety professional have had some migration to cloud, some migration to mobility, some cybersecurity posture, but COVID-19 basically gave it a kick and said, enough dabbling, let's get on with it. So most organizations are now primed at this point to be digitally enabled. And that is why 2021 is the year of connected work and the year that we can leverage all of this acceleration. So let's look at connected work. Connected work, which results in connected safety, is fairly simple in concept. It is where people, things, so equipment, sensors, other information from the workplace are interconnected via the internet. So there's a transfer of knowledge between people and equipment and processes and knowledge through the internet. And for that to be successful, we need connectivity. And we are starting to see, again, through the acceleration of COVID-19, an understanding of where we cannot have a successful connected work program because we don't have connectivity. We are now starting to come into the space where, so every roughly 10 years, we see an increase in the generation of mobile technologies. So the first generation analog went digital with 2G, which then came out into 3G, 4G, and now into 5G. So the fifth generation of mobile technologies. And what that is enabling us to do is have lower latency, so a far better connection, better data transfer throughout the network, so we can get better access to our information no matter where we are. That means that we can start providing, sharing insights in two directions from workers at the physical location where they're performing their work. And in environments where we don't have mobile networks, obviously we have the ability to have Wi-Fi networks. There are some excellent examples of private Wi-Fi networks and private long-term evolution networks like underground mines, where we are able to connect that mine back to the remote control center, remote operation center, and enable that connected work scenario to occur. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, because with satellites and the emergence of low orbit satellites, we can also provide connections to connect people anywhere in the world. And certainly with RealWare, we're connecting people in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the desert, no matter where they are in the world, with satellite connectivity. A connected work program can be supported. So the sensor component of the Internet of Things, so the things that are connected to the internet, we have, as I said before, cheap sensors that can be placed on equipment to monitor things like vibration, temperature, humidity, emissions, NOx and SOx emissions, for example, or BTEX, benzene, xylene, ethyl, toluene, ethyl, benzene, xylene, whatever the other one is. We can obviously use sensors to get that information, and they can be wearable or fixed. And some of the sensors that are providing us with really interesting information about risk is location sensors. So predominantly GPS enables us to look geospatially at our information to geographically understand our risk profile. And we'll talk about what connected work does for us as health and safety professionals in just a second. We'll first look at the solution suite though. So to develop a connected work strategy, you really need hardware and software, but the ultimate is to have a good user experience. So having a really structured and considered approach to your hardware selection and your software selection will determine your user experience and will unlock that value to enable you to reduce risk in the field. So the hardware landscape covers the gamut from laptops and tablets. Obviously, laptops, ruggedized laptops are reasonable, but they're really a thing of the past, with now ruggedized tablets coming out, and more importantly, ruggedized wearable tablets. So we're starting to see devices emerge from being handheld to wearable, and that form factor and be as close to being enabling that worker to work in their natural way. So a successful connected work hardware would be a hardware that enables a worker to simply go about their job using their hands, wearing their PPE, not being overly distracted or overly immersed, but having access to that information when they needed it, where they're physically at the work location. So things like wearable computers, and in certain contexts, the smart glass technology, have the ability to provide that for the workforce. From there, we have the software, and obviously hardware requires software to run and access information. And when you look at the software landscape, it is a mish. There is a whole range of software options on the market. And as health and safety professionals looking to be part of this conversation, you can quite quickly get lost. And this sort of enters the concept of the concierge, and we'll talk about that as we close out the session. So first of all, selecting requirements for software, health and safety professionals absolutely should have a seat at the table. And the types of things that safety professionals would want to be looking at include, does the software have the capability to be operated both with an internet connection and without an internet connection? Once I have the information, how does that software integrate with other components of my management system? How much customization is required, or is it a simple configuration for me to get this software working for my business, for my operational context? So this type of questions and type of information are the types of questions and requirements gathering that you need to have your finger on the pulse with as a safety professional to enable the benefits of connected work. And UX is king. So user experience, otherwise known as UX, is a resultant outcome of the interface. So the user interface, both the ergonomic design of the hardware, the way that the software is set up in terms of its color scheme, in terms of whether it's controlled with voice or controlled with hands and gesture control. And the key considerations here, if you want to unlock value for a worker who is doing a high-risk task, a high-risk operation, is you can't afford to impact that user's situational awareness or their ability to naturally interact in that work environment. So the age of typing into a keyboard out in the middle of the field or accessing paper or accessing a tablet using your hands is not going to enable you to get all the value that you could get from a connected work strategy, and arguably can't be used at all when a worker is engaged in a task. You can't climb the ladder with a tablet, for example. So that then enters the subset of where I think we're going to see a massive transformation this year is is obviously connected work, but also the operation of field devices, field mobility devices with voice. So we've been storytelling for generations. We've been using our voice to communicate risk and dangers throughout our peers and with our relationships. So why not translate that to health and safety transfer of knowledge? We should be able to use our voice to communicate the issues that we have when we're in the workplace. We shouldn't need to have our head down, our hands engaged, our minds off task. We should be able to look around, see what's out in the work environment, communicate the risks, activate our devices with our voice. And that's an example of where I talked about my affiliation before with strategic advisory with Risk Talk. That's a great example of what voice technology is doing. And I strongly believe that that type of experience will mean that Risk Talk will be very successful this year and beyond. And the same with RealWare. Voice activated technology enables that natural workflow when you're interacting with risk at what we call the edge. So that the environment where you're at the edge of where the internet and the work meets. So what does that all mean, and why what's the point of all of this? So this is my scribble, which I've turned into a bit of an image, which really is what does connected work give us as health and safety professionals, and why would it be something that I would look to in my strategy? Why would I want to even consider having a play in this space? So connected work, connecting the people that are doing the work with the internet and with information from the equipment through sensors. That information ultimately enables us to get real-time risk information. So as safety professionals, having a worker with a head-mounted wearable computer and some sensors in that work environment, I can get real-time information about that work as the work is being performed. If I apply good work design principles and a user-centered approach to health and safety problem solving, by having that real-time risk information, I can decrease my uncertainty on my objective. So basically I can decrease my risk and I can improve my worker's experience. So my worker will be more engaged, have a far better experience at work, And that will, by definition, mean that I hopefully will improve my workplace well-being, reduce my workplace risk as it relates to fatal risk and injury risk. And by having that real-time risk information, I can apply the technologies like robotics and automation to eliminate components of hazardous work tasks, but I can apply those good work design principles with a digitally enhanced hierarchy of controls through that real-time risk information to ultimately change the landscape of risk in my business. And this is the prize that we have at our fingertips when it comes to connected work, and why I believe it's such a great place to start to get all those ingredients in place to try and improve work through connected strategy. So what do we do? How do we go about doing this? How do we start leveraging this forecast? First of all, prepare yourself. And I strongly believe that the health and safety professional should consider itself as somewhat of a concierge. Exactly like a hotel concierge, you would walk up to the hotel concierge and say, where's somewhere I can take my 3-year-old child who loves Mickey Mouse? Or where can I get the best Vietnamese baguettes in banh mi in the city? And the concierge will have a relatively decent level of knowledge across the board of the different things and match them to your preferences and help solve your problem with some considered recommendations. I believe that the health and safety professional is akin to that of a concierge and is in a really great position to be able to communicate and solve complex problems throughout the workplace by having a few key components to the skill set. First is digital literacy. So having a basic understanding of connectivity, a basic understanding of the roadmap of your ICT team. Do you have, is your information hosted in the cloud, or is it on-prem and therefore unable to be accessed in certain areas with certain protocols that have to be followed? What's the difference between augmented reality, assisted reality, virtual reality, extended reality, mixed reality? Do I need to know that? Why would that be important if I want to start looking at a connected strategy? But having that base level of literacy puts you in a great position to be able to communicate and to act as that concierge. An innovation mindset and a user-centered design approach. So some change management skills, some user-centered design skills, understanding human preference, understanding what makes work demands reduced in terms of autonomy, in terms of decision control, those types of components of good work design, having an understanding of those, and then having an internal drive to be collaborative, being okay with being wrong and being okay with sharing your ideas with others and co-designing an outcome rather than thinking it all has to be about me. And when you engage an external vendor in relation to a technology, perhaps your MyOsh, for example, as an EHS software, is becoming more collaborative and more involved with asking them questions about their strategy and how that aligns with your strategy. So first of all, prepare yourself, then have a look at how to prepare your workforce. And that might not be individual preparation, but just understanding where your workforce is at. How far along the change management journey are they? What is the state of play of the organization? What is the level of connectivity in the organization? Does it have a decent Wi-Fi network? Is there a plan to get an improvement in the Wi-Fi network? Is there particular preferences around whether people like using Apple devices or Android devices? What types of work is performed that people really enjoy doing, that relies on human relationships and connections, that would really be detrimental to turn virtual? Get an understanding of that and really get strongly, closely connected with your ICT team to get a better knowledge of what they're doing, what's on their vision, what's their 2021 strategy and beyond. Having a health and safety strategy that is fundamentally disconnected from the IT strategy will mean that you're not going to be able to leverage connected work. And lastly, prepare your management system. These are the types of things you should have had in place 5 years ago. Health and safety professionals, well, probably longer. All businesses should have had a working from home policy at least 10 years ago. So COVID-19's probably nudged most people to dust theirs off and relook at it. Extend that to working from anywhere. It's not just about working from home, it's working from absolutely anywhere. What are the requirements that you need to enable the ability to work from anywhere in the world, from anywhere within your work environment, so that you can actually obtain all of those benefits of connected work? So once you have a policy and a framework, the process and procedures that support that, looking at your management system to determine what components, and I've just realized I'm kind of just talking on a blank screen, so here I am again. So having a look at the remote management system, what types of, when you look at your management system and all of the elements within it, leadership, supervision, training, high risk task controls, planning, all of the different audit and assurance, all the different components of your management system, what of those elements in the management system could be conducted remotely, and start understanding whether or not you can continue to get value, great value out of doing remote, what components should be done hybrid, and what components should be done human-centered with just human relationship and interaction. You can actually look at your KPIs and revise your KPIs around remote management. So remote observations, remote leadership tasks, remote auditing, virtual reviews of work tasks can all be performed. And then take your health and safety management system and strategy, combine that with your IT strategy, and that prepares your organization for the future. I was queried about my approach and recommendations by a gentleman from the UK who said, is this ethical what you're doing? You know, if you automate a whole bunch of stuff and you get robots to do things, humans won't be stressing their bodies healthy in a healthy way in the environment, and they'll become sedentary and will get issues to do with the human not being as active as they should be. What about data privacy, and what about you know, Big Brother and taking information and monitoring and putting people into stressful environments? What about technology dehumanizing the workplace and removing our relationships? What's your ethical position on that? And it was a really great question, and it got me thinking, and it made me reflect on my time as a physiotherapist, where everything that we did was evidence-based. And when it comes to emerging technologies, unfortunately, there really isn't a significant evidence base for a lot of stuff that's out on the market, and that's accelerating into the market. And our evidence base is catching up. Our research organizations and educational institutions are unable to keep up. So what do you do? And my personal response to that is sign up to a code of ethics, some level of code of conduct. And for me, that is the Australian Institute of Health and Safety's code of ethics. And that guides my decision-making around what I do. So I am able to say to myself and to other stakeholders, I apply a code of ethics to my decision-making as it comes to emerging technologies and safety technology in the workplace. Then start conducting your own ethnographic research. So do your own little experiments in controlled environments to test assumptions that you have about this technology to determine that you're able to implement it safely and sustainably, and seek research partnerships. There's some amazing stuff going on. There's a cobots, a collaborative robots research project that's just been announced from Safe Work New South Wales. That's open for anybody who's in New South Wales to collaborate on that. There are research projects all over the world. There's some great things with Lloyd's Register. There's even some excellent work that is being done out of Melbourne University, Scott McMillan with his virtual reality projects. There's absolutely opportunity to become more evidence-based in this space. And as we get more evidence, we continue to be more widespread with the adoption of technology, which hopefully step changes health and safety performance in the workplace. So with that being said, that is my forecast and my insights to connected work and a little bit of a playbook to get started for 2021. Let's see how well this holds up in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, and hopefully we'll see you again in another 12 months to debrief and reforecast. So back to you, Jared, for some questions, and thanks everybody for your time. It's been fun from my end, but a lot of talking.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. We do have a couple of questions. The first one from Wayne says, I feel that what you're discussing is very much the way of the future for a permanent workforce. How would this work for a contractor-based workforce?
Interesting question, and it's probably one that needs to be unpacked. I guess in terms of the payment, like the only concern here would be who's paying for the infrastructure. And the fact that this is work from anywhere and based on individual preference, in my view, it probably doesn't really make a difference whether it's a individual contractor workforce or a contractor to an organization. I am working with a lot of contractors, like contractor organizations, so suppliers to major client organizations. And it's actually the contractor organizations that are able to get a connected work strategy up and running far quicker than the bigger organizations. So I'm conscious that hasn't probably answered the question, but I'd love you to connect with me via LinkedIn, and perhaps we can open that dialogue and get a better understanding of that. And yeah, have a look at the different dimensions of what you were asking. So thanks, Wayne. Good question.
This question is actually also from Wayne. He says, how will this sort of connective tech work with remote workers, such as those in poor or no mobile access areas?
Good question. And the answer is based on how much value you think you're going to get out of that connected strategy. So by design, a connected strategy requires a connection to the internet. So the whole point of 2021, if you're unable to connect your work, is to prepare your business to get connected. In the last 12 months, we've seen workplaces, and again, like underground mines, 10 years ago, if you even had a thought bubble that an underground mine would be fully connected with a gigabit connection, you'd be thinking, crazy. So technology is improving. 5G, so fifth generation mobile technologies are increasing. Low orbit satellite is increasing. If you can't connect your workforce, at least prepare your management system to get connected at the time that inevitably we will be connecting all corners of the world. That's my suggestion from a tech prediction. So get ready to get connected if you're not connected already, and leverage offline capability. Projects we did in Papua New Guinea, where we did everything offline and then asynchronous connection to the internet. You're not getting real-time risk information, but you are getting closer to real-time risk information than if you didn't try that. Thanks again for your participation, Wayne.
Cool. Well, that's it for questions. So yeah, I just want to remind everyone that we have recorded this session and that we'll be sending out a email on Monday with the full recording and links to slides, etc. Yeah, I want to thank everyone for, oh, hang on, we've got one more question. Ryan says, I definitely see that this is the way of the future. Obviously, the evolving technology has its own risks and needs. This probably extends outside the safety professionals' traditional risk-based awareness. Where do you find more information about this?
What a beautiful segue. So the reason why I kind of felt the Safety Innovation Academy approach had legs was the fact that I've only been able to learn in my own experience has been learning by I shifted completely out of a health and safety professional role into a full-time technology role because I felt I needed that immersive experience in a tech provider to be more well-rounded in my own professional knowledge, and then a lot of seeking out learning myself. But there is no one-stop shop or no kind of real foundation to get the base principles. So my hope is that the Safety Innovation Academy will be a place for you to get your base level. So follow me, which is the Safety Innovation Academy on LinkedIn, for ways to get access. I'll continue to drip feed tips and tricks. There will be webinars coming up where I'll unpack more of this kind of stuff. So there's a webinar. I've got two webinars coming up in the next 3 weeks, and we'll be looking at more practical ways to implement this stuff. There are lots of short courses on individual streams of what I've talked about today, on things like edX, like the massive online open communication platforms. But fundamentally, it's just satisfying your own curiosity. And yeah, there is a market gap. So that's what I'm hoping to try and fill. Right now, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, or help you plan out your digital strategy for this year. Just drop me a line on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on there, as most of you will know that know me. But that's really it. There is no one-stop shop. The design thinking stuff, there's a lot of resources around design thinking. And Sarah Pazel puts out a lot of content about good work design. Follow things like the Future of Work Institute from Curtin University. There's some excellent stuff coming out of the UK with the Lloyd's Register, the National Safety Council from the US. Great people to follow in this space. You have people like Abby Ferry that dabble in safety tech from the US, and one of my good friends, Scott out of the US as well. I'll connect you with him. There's a lot of people that are starting to dabble in this space and put out their thought leadership. So again, if you follow the Safety Innovation Academy, that's going to be the best place to get some consolidated information, and you can choose to kind of follow your pathway from there.
Cool. Well, I think that's probably it for questions. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending the session today. And on behalf of Myosh, I'd like to thank Cameron for his time today. I'm sure everyone would agree that it's been very valuable.
Thanks, team. And it's Scott Clark from the US, by the way. Sorry, Scott. And I'm sure you're online. So shout out to folks that have come online. So there we go. Thanks very much. And we will hopefully see you at the intersection where safety and technology meet at the cutting edge.
Cool.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.